My parents stole my $180,000 inheritance to give it to my golden child sister. When I confronted them, they laughed, saying I couldn't do anything. But I sued them and got every penny back. Now they're begging for forgiveness. I'm 17 years old. I'm about to start college next month. And honestly, I still can't believe all of this happened, because like 6 months ago, my life was completely different, and I thought my family was normal, with typical problems but nothing serious, until I discovered that my parents basically stole all the money my grandparents left me for college and gave it to my older sister so she could buy a house. Yeah, you read that right. And no, I'm not exaggerating at all. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand all the context. I'm the youngest of two sisters. My sister Melissa is 25 years old and always, and when I say always, I mean literally since I can remember, has been my parents' favorite. It's not something I made up in my head or anything like that. It was super obvious to everyone. My aunts and uncles knew it. My cousins knew it. Even my friends, when they came over, would notice. Melissa was the perfect child. She got good grades, never got in trouble, was a kindergarten teacher, which for my parents was like she had discovered the cure for cancer, and basically could do whatever she wanted without consequences. I, on the other hand, was always the second choice, the backup daughter, let's say, and my parents never really bothered to hide it. When I was like 13, my paternal grandparents died. First my grandmother and then my grandfather like 6 months later, and it was super hard for the whole family because they were amazing to me. Like they really loved me and paid attention to me in a way my parents never did. Turns out in their will they left a college fund specifically for me. I think it was like $180,000 or something like that. A pretty decent amount that was more than enough for a public university, and even had some left over for extras. My parents told me when the will was read. I remember that day perfectly because my mom said something like, "Well, at least we won't have to worry about your college. Your grandparents already took care of that." Melissa had already graduated by that time, so she didn't receive anything specific from the grandparents regarding education, but it's not like she needed it because my parents had paid for everything. The next few years were pretty normal in the sense that I was still invisible in my own house, but at least I had the peace of mind knowing I could go to college without having to go into debt or depend on my parents, and that gave me like a certain mental peace because it meant that after 18 I could get out of there and make my own life. Melissa started dating her boyfriend Kevin like 2 years ago. He's 27 and works at a zoo, which sounds cool, but honestly, he doesn't make much money. And my parents were obsessed with them getting married and having kids and all that stuff. I was in my senior year of high school, applying to colleges, taking all the necessary exams, and basically counting the days to get out of that house. Everything exploded in February of this year, and I swear it was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I was looking for some documents in my dad's office because I needed my birth certificate for a college application, and I found a folder that had my name on it. Obviously, I opened it thinking maybe my important documents were there, and what I found was all the documentation of the college fund my grandparents left me. But there was something weird because the last statements showed a balance of zero, completely empty. I stood there with the papers in my hand thinking, this has to be a mistake. It can't be real. But the more I reviewed it, the clearer it was that all the money had been transferred to an account in Melissa's name like 4 months ago. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Literally, I had to sit on the floor because my legs weren't responding. And the worst part is that I also found documents for the house Melissa had just bought with Kevin. The purchase contract. And all that information. And the dates matched perfectly. My parents had taken my money. The money my grandparents left specifically for my education. And gave it to my sister so she could buy a house. They didn't lend it to her. It wasn't an administrative error. They literally stole my inheritance and gave it to the favorite daughter. I went downstairs with all the documents in my hand. My parents were in the living room watching TV like nothing was wrong. And I asked them, I need you to explain to me what happened with my college fund, because I just saw that it's empty, and the money was transferred to Melissa's account. My mom didn't even look at me, kept watching TV and said something like, your sister needed help with the down payment on her house and we decided to support her. Just like that, without further explanation, like it was the most normal thing in the world, I said. It was my money. Grandpa and Grandma left it to me for my college, and my dad finally turned around and said, Melissa is part of this family just like you. She also deserved help, and you can take out student loans like everyone else. I started crying right there. I couldn't control myself. And I yelled at them that this was theft, that the money was in a trust specifically for my education, and they couldn't do that legally. and basically I threatened to sue them. And you know what they did? They laughed. My dad literally laughed in my face and said, "You're going to sue us? With what money? Arya? Who's going to represent you? You're a 17-year-old girl who has nothing." And my mom added, "Besides, the money's already spent. It's already done. So you better accept reality and start looking for scholarships and loans like all normal students." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I spent it in my room crying and thinking about what to do. Because they were right about something. I didn't have money to hire a lawyer. I had nowhere to go if they kicked me out of the house, and it was only a few months until I graduated from high school. But the more I thought about the situation, the more furious I got. I mean, not only had they stolen from me, but they were making fun of me. They thought I was so weak and so dependent that I wasn't going to do anything. The next morning, I started packing my things. I didn't have a real plan, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house one more day. And I called my best friend to ask if I could stay with her for a few days while I figured out what to do. Her parents are amazing, and said yes without thinking twice. I think because they already knew what my family situation was like. When my parents realized I was packing, they thought it was a tantrum. My mom said something like, "Don't be dramatic, Arya. You're not going anywhere." But I kept packing and literally left that same day. Honestly, it was terrifying because I didn't know what was going to happen to me, but it was also liberating in a way. Like it's time I was making a real decision about my life, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. My friend's parents let me stay in their guest room and treated me better in those first few days than my own parents had in years, and that made me realize how toxic my life in that house had been. The problem was that I needed real legal help and I didn't know anyone. My parents had cut off all contact with my dad's extended family after my grandparents died. Like there was drama there that I never really understood. But basically, we didn't talk to anyone on the paternal side. So I came up with something kind of desperate. I looked on Facebook for all of my dad's relatives I could find and sent them a long message explaining the whole situation, telling them that my parents had stolen my college fund and that I needed help. I didn't expect anyone to respond honestly. I thought maybe they would ignore me or say it was my problem, but I needed to try. The next day, I received a message from my Uncle Gregory, my dad's younger brother, who I literally hadn't seen since I was like 10 years old. Turns out, my uncle is a high-ranking military officer. I don't know exactly what he does, but basically he's important in the army. And his message said something like, "Arya, I just read your message and I'm absolutely furious with your father. Give me 24 hours and I'll take care of this. Don't worry about anything." Honestly, I thought it was a generic response to make me feel better. I didn't think anything real was going to happen. But my uncle was not playing around at all. Turns out he knew the lawyer who had executed my grandparents' will, a guy named Christopher who was a family friend, and my uncle contacted him immediately to review the whole legal situation. Christopher confirmed that my parents had violated the terms of the trust because the money was specifically designated for my education, and they couldn't transfer it to anyone else without legal consequences. And that basically they had a solid case to sue for misappropriation of funds. My uncle told Christopher to do whatever was necessary and that he would pay all the legal costs, and he also sent me another message saying that he and his wife Dorothy wanted to help me with whatever I needed. Christopher sent a formal letter to my parents like 3 days after I talked to my uncle, explaining the legal situation and basically threatening them with a full lawsuit if they didn't return the money immediately. And that's when my parents went into complete panic mode, because Christopher wasn't just any lawyer. He was someone respected and with connections. And the letter made it very clear that they had proof of everything, and that the case was practically won before it started. My mom called me like 20 times that day, leaving me voicemails where she was literally crying and saying we needed to talk, that we could solve this as a family, that there was no need to involve lawyers. I finally answered one of her calls and my dad got on the phone. His tone was completely different from a few days ago when he was laughing at me. Now he sounded nervous and like trying to be nice. And he told me, "Look, Arya, we made a mistake, we admit it. But you don't have to take this so far. We can pay for your college directly without needing to return the money to the trust. We'll pay you everything, tuition, books, whatever you need." I told them no, that wasn't enough. That I wanted my money back in full because it was mine and because they had no right to take it in the first place. My mom got hysterical hearing that and started screaming that I was being selfish and vindictive, that Melissa was going to lose her house if they had to return the money, and I just told her, "That's not my problem. You made that decision without consulting me. Now you have to face the consequences." My uncle, meanwhile, did something amazing. He got me a small apartment near my friend's school and told me he would pay the rent until I graduated and could work or went to college. Like, he literally pulled me out of nowhere and gave me stability when I needed it most. His wife, Dorothy, was also super sweet. She took me to buy basic things for the apartment and treated me like I was her own daughter. And honestly, that meant more to me than the money itself, because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone in my family really cared about me without conditions. The legal process continued because my parents didn't want to cooperate initially. They thought I was going to give up or that my uncle was going to get tired of paying lawyers, but they didn't understand that my uncle was doing this also on principle because he was furious with my dad for how he had treated me all these years. They received the official lawsuit papers like 2 weeks later, and that's when they realized this was serious because the document included not only the return of the full money but also additional damages for the emotional distress and stress they had caused me. Christopher was very good at his job. He had built a solid case with all the trust documents, the bank transfers, everything was documented perfectly. We had several virtual mediation sessions because the judge wanted to give them the opportunity to resolve this without going to court, and it was super awkward because basically it was me with my uncle and Christopher on one side of the screen, and my parents with their lawyer, a pretty mediocre one by the way, on the other side. My parents kept trying to negotiate, offering to pay half now and the other half in payments, offering to pay for my college directly but without returning the full money to me. And every time they proposed something like that, Christopher simply said no, that either they returned everything or we went to court and they would probably end up paying even more. In one of those sessions, my dad literally started crying on camera, saying I was destroying the family, that Melissa was devastated because she was going to lose her house, and that he didn't understand how his own daughter could be so cruel. And I just sat there thinking, really? He's calling me cruel after stealing from me and making fun of me? My uncle intervened at that moment and told my dad something like, "Don't you dare play the victim here. You stole the money that Dad and Mom left specifically for Arya's education. You betrayed your own daughter's trust. And now you're trying to emotionally manipulate her to get your way. But it's not going to work." I had never seen my uncle so angry. And honestly, it was satisfying to see someone finally defend my position. After like the third mediation session, my parents finally agreed to return all the money. They really had no other choice, because Christopher made it very clear that if we went to court, they were going to lose, and probably would have to pay more for legal costs and additional damages. The agreement was that they had 60 days to return the full $180,000, plus the interest that had been generated, and that I would withdraw the lawsuit once the money was back in the trust. It was weird. Like, part of me felt satisfaction from having won, but another part was sad because this basically meant that my relationship with my parents was completely destroyed. But honestly, looking back, I don't know if we ever had a real relationship. What I didn't expect was for Melissa to contact me directly like 2 weeks after we signed the agreement. She sent me a long message saying she needed to talk to me because she had found out a lot of things she didn't know. We met at a coffee shop. I brought my best friend with me just in case, and Melissa was literally with puffy eyes from crying. She told me that she honestly didn't know that the money for her house came from my college fund, that my parents had told her it was money they had saved and that they wanted to help her because it was a good time to buy. And that when she found out the truth during the legal process, she was completely in shock. She showed me messages where she was fighting with my parents for having lied to her too and for having done this to me, and she told me that she and Kevin were selling the house because she didn't want to keep something that was basically stolen from me. I don't know. It was weird because I always thought Melissa was part of the problem, that she knew and agreed with everything, but turns out our parents manipulated her too. Doesn't mean we're best friends now or anything like that. There's still a lot of resentment on my part for all the years of favoritism, but at least I understand that in this specific situation, she wasn't the bad guy in the story. She told me she was going to return the money herself as soon as she sold the house so our parents wouldn't have to, that it was her way of trying to fix things, even though she hadn't been the one who made the original decision. While all this was happening, I kept applying to colleges and doing my last semester of high school, which was super stressful because I was literally dealing with all this legal drama while trying to maintain my grades and take exams. But it was worth it because I got accepted to my first choice university, a good state school with an amazing biology program, which is what I want to study. And I also got a partial merit scholarship that covers like 40% of tuition. With the trust fund money back plus the scholarship, I can basically pay for all of college without problems and even have enough left over to live comfortably. And that's exactly what my grandparents wanted when they left me that money. My uncle and Aunt Dorothy helped me move to campus like 3 weeks ago. They drove like 6 hours to come and brought me a bunch of stuff for my dorm room, and my uncle gave me a long hug when they were leaving and told me he was proud of me for having fought for what was mine. Honestly, without him, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have lost everything, and my parents would have gotten away with it. Now I have a close relationship with my uncle and aunt that I never thought I would have. They call me every week to see how I am and invited me to spend Thanksgiving with them, and it's weird but nice to have family that really cares. As for my parents, I haven't talked to them since we signed the legal agreement. I blocked their numbers after my mom sent me like 50 messages trying to make me feel guilty for destroying the family. My maternal grandfather also contacted me to tell me I was selfish and that I should be grateful to have parents who gave me a roof, but honestly, his opinion doesn't matter to me because he always supported my parents in everything. The only person from my immediate family I have some contact with is Melissa. We text each other occasionally. Nothing deep, but at least it's cordial. Now I'm here at college, taking classes I love, living on campus, making new friends, and basically starting the life I always wanted to have. Sometimes I think about everything that happened and I still get angry. Like the fact that my own parents did something like that is something I'll probably never completely get over. But I also feel proud of myself for having fought and not letting myself be trampled. My grandparents left that money to give me opportunities, and that's exactly what I'm doing with it. Studying and building my future, and I feel like somehow I'm honoring them by using their gift the way they wanted.